What if I told you that the most powerful man in a billion-dollar company spent 3 months living as the person everyone ignored? What if the janitor mopping your office floors was actually your boss, watching every move you made? This isn't fiction. This is the extraordinary true story of how one CEO's brilliant disguise exposed the shocking truth about his company and changed everything. Before we dive into this incredible journey, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now if you believe that true leadership isn't about the title on your door, but the character in your heart. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this one will transform the way you think about success, loyalty, and what it really means to lead. Meet Richard Harrison, the 52-year-old CEO of Harrison Industries, a manufacturing empire worth over $2 billion. From his glass office on the 40th floor, Richard commanded respect, fear, and sometimes envy from his 15,000 employees. But success had created a problem he never anticipated. The higher he climbed, the further he drifted from the reality of his own company. For months, Richard had been hearing whispers, rumors of corruption, stories of managers taking kickbacks, reports of employees being mistreated. But every time he asked his executives about these issues, they assured him everything was perfect. The numbers looked good. Productivity was up. What could possibly be wrong? But Richard Harrison didn't become a billionaire by accepting surface-level answers. He had built his fortune by getting his hands dirty, by understanding every aspect of his business from the ground up. And now, 3 decades after founding his company, he was about to embark on the most dangerous mission of his career. The plan was insane. Richard would fake his own medical leave, telling his board of directors that he needed surgery and extensive recovery time. Meanwhile, he would transform himself completely and return to his own company as Thomas Miller, a humble gateman looking for work. The transformation took weeks. Richard dyed his graying hair black, grew a beard, and practiced speaking with a different accent. He studied the mannerisms of working-class men, learned their struggles, and even moved into a small apartment in the part of town where his lowest-paid employees lived. When he looked in the mirror, even he didn't recognize the man staring back. But here's what Richard didn't expect. The moment he walked through those company gates as Thomas Miller, everything he thought he knew about his business crumbled. His first day as a gateman was a rude awakening. The uniform was uncomfortable, the hours were long, and the pay was barely enough to cover basic expenses. But these weren't the real shocks. The real revelations came from watching how people treated someone they considered beneath them. Managers who smiled warmly at board meetings walked past Thomas without acknowledgement. Executives who preached about company values in conferences spoke rudely to security staff. The very people Richard had trusted to run his company showed their true colors when they thought no one important was watching. And then there was Marcus Thompson. Marcus was a 34-year-old maintenance worker who had been with the company for 8 years. While other employees ignored or dismissed Thomas, Marcus was different. On Thomas's second day, when he was struggling to understand the complex security system, Marcus stopped his own work to help. "You new here?" Marcus asked with genuine kindness. "This system can be tricky. Let me show you." For the next hour, Marcus patiently explained not just how the security gates worked, but also shared insights about the company that amazed Thomas. Marcus knew which departments were struggling, which managers were creating problems, and which employees were being unfairly treated. More importantly, he cared. But here's what broke Richard's heart. Despite Marcus's intelligence, dedication, and natural leadership abilities, other employees treated him terribly. Thomas watched in horror as managers spoke down to Marcus, as colleagues dismissed his ideas, and as his contributions went unrecognized. The reason? Marcus had started as a janitor. In their minds, that's all he would ever be. As days turned into weeks, Richard witnessed corruption that made his blood boil. He saw department heads taking bribes from suppliers. He watched managers steal company resources for personal use. He observed discrimination so blatant, it was criminal. The company he had built with his own hands was rotting from the inside. But through it all, Marcus remained a beacon of integrity. One evening, as Thomas was about to finish his shift, he overheard a conversation that changed everything. 2 senior managers were discussing a scheme to embezzle funds from the employee pension plan. They were laughing about it, confident that no one would ever discover their theft. Thomas's hands shook with rage. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet they were stealing. This was the retirement security of thousands of hard-working people. People who had dedicated their lives to building this company. The next morning, Thomas couldn't contain himself any longer. He approached Marcus during their break. "Marcus," he said carefully, "what would you do if you knew the company was in serious trouble, if you discovered that people were stealing from employees?" Marcus looked surprised by the question. He studied Thomas's face for a long moment before answering. "You know something, don't you?" Marcus said quietly. "I've suspected things weren't right for months. The way certain managers live beyond their means. The way decisions get made that don't benefit anyone except a few people at the top." Thomas felt his heart racing. This was the moment of truth. "What if I told you I could prove it?" Thomas whispered. "What if I told you we could stop them?" Marcus leaned forward. "Then I'd say we have a responsibility to every person who works here. These people trust this company with their livelihoods. If someone's betraying that trust, we can't stay silent." And that's when Richard Harrison knew he had found something more valuable than gold. He had found a man of unshakable integrity. Over the next few days, Thomas and Marcus worked together to gather evidence. Marcus's access to different areas of the building, combined with his sharp eye for detail, made him the perfect partner. They documented everything: the bribes, the embezzlement, the discrimination, the abuse of power. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Are you still with me? Because what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. Make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss how this incredible story unfolds. One night, while reviewing security footage, Thomas discovered something that made his hands tremble. The corruption went all the way to the top. 3 of his most trusted vice presidents were not only aware of the stealing, they were orchestrating it. These were men he had mentored, men he had considered friends, men he had trusted with the future of his company. The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss he had ever experienced, but it also crystallized something important in his mind. True loyalty wasn't about position or politics, it was about character. And the man with the most character in his entire company was the maintenance worker everyone else ignored. The time had come to reveal the truth. Richard scheduled an emergency board meeting for the following Friday. He told his executives that Thomas Miller, the new gateman, had uncovered serious irregularities and would be presenting his findings. The guilty parties were confident they could discredit whatever a lowly security guard might say. They had no idea what was coming. Friday morning arrived with tension thick in the air. The boardroom filled with executives, department heads, and senior managers. Thomas Miller sat at the end of the table, looking nervous and out of place. Marcus had been invited as a witness, though many wondered why a maintenance worker was in such an important meeting. Thomas began his presentation quietly, methodically laying out evidence of corruption. As he spoke, his voice grew stronger, more authoritative. He presented financial records, documented conversations, and video evidence that painted a devastating picture of systematic theft and abuse. The guilty executives tried to interrupt, to discredit him, to shift blame. But Thomas had prepared for every objection. His knowledge of the company's operations was impossibly detailed for a gateman who had only worked there for 3 months. And then came the moment everyone would remember forever. Thomas stood up slowly. He removed the fake beard. He wiped away the hair dye, and he looked directly at the men who had betrayed him. "My name is not Thomas Miller," he said, in a voice that commanded absolute silence. "My name is Richard Harrison, and this is my company." The room erupted in chaos. Executives who had been arrogant moments before now sat in stunned silence. The men who had stolen from the pension fund looked like they wanted to disappear. But Richard wasn't finished. "For 3 months, I have worked alongside you as Thomas Miller. I have seen how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. I have witnessed corruption that sickens me. And I have discovered that some of you have forgotten what this company stands for." He turned to face Marcus, who sat frozen in shock. "But I have also found something extraordinary. I have found a man who embodies every value this company was built on. A man who shows integrity when he thinks no one is watching. a man who cares more about doing what's right than advancing his own career. Richard walked over to Marcus and extended his hand. "Marcus Thompson, you have passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. You have shown me what true leadership looks like, and that's why, effective immediately, I am promoting you to Senior Vice President of Operations, with a path to become my successor as CEO of this company." The room fell completely silent. Marcus, the maintenance worker everyone had dismissed, was now one of the most powerful people in the building. But wait, because the story gets even more incredible. As security escorted the corrupt executives from the building, Richard addressed the remaining employees. He didn't just fire the guilty parties, he implemented sweeping changes to prevent future corruption. He established anonymous reporting systems. He created advancement programs for overlooked employees, and he instituted a policy that every senior executive must spend time working in entry-level positions. Marcus's promotion sent shockwaves throughout the company. Some employees were skeptical. How could a maintenance worker suddenly become a vice president? But Marcus proved his worth quickly. His intimate knowledge of operations, combined with his natural leadership abilities and uncompromising integrity, made him incredibly effective. Within 6 months, productivity increased by 30%. Employee satisfaction reached all-time highs. The company culture transformed from one of fear and politics to one of respect and merit-based advancement. But perhaps the most powerful change was in how employees treated each other. When word spread about how the CEO had disguised himself and what he had learned, everyone realized that character mattered more than titles. The janitor cleaning your office might be your future boss. The security guard at the gate might be someone whose integrity exceeds your own. Marcus embraced his new role with humility and determination. He never forgot where he came from or the people who had supported him. He used his position to lift up other overlooked employees, creating opportunities for advancement based on merit rather than politics. 3 years later, when Richard announced his retirement, no one was surprised that Marcus Thompson would take over as CEO. The maintenance worker who had been ignored and dismissed was now leading a company worth over $3 billion. On his final day as CEO, Richard reflected on the greatest lesson of his career. True leadership isn't about commanding from the top of a tower. It's about understanding every level of your organization. It's about recognizing talent wherever it exists. And it's about having the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult. But the most important lesson came from Marcus himself. During his promotion ceremony, Marcus had said something that stuck with Richard forever. Integrity isn't what you do when people are watching. It's who you are when you think no one cares. This story teaches us something profound about human nature and leadership. How many talented people do we overlook because of their current position? How many future leaders are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize their potential? And how differently would we all behave if we knew we were being watched by someone who mattered? The truth is, we are always being watched. By our colleagues, by our subordinates, by our customers, and most importantly, by ourselves. Every interaction is a test of our character. Every decision reveals who we truly are. Marcus Thompson is now one of the most respected CEOs in the industry. Under his leadership, Harrison Industries has become known not just for profitability, but for ethical practices and employee development. He still remembers what it felt like to be overlooked and dismissed, and he makes sure that never happens to anyone in his company. And Richard Harrison? He spends his retirement mentoring young entrepreneurs, teaching them that the most important business skill isn't reading financial statements or negotiating deals. It's recognizing and developing human potential wherever you find it. This story should make us all examine our own lives. How do we treat people we consider beneath us? Do we judge people by their current position or by their character? Are we the kind of people who would pass Richard Harrison's test? The next time you interact with someone in a service position, remember Marcus Thompson. Remember that greatness often comes in humble packages. Remember that integrity is more valuable than intelligence, and character matters more than credentials. Before we finish, I want you to think about this. What if you're being tested right now? What if someone is watching how you treat others, how you handle responsibility, how you respond to challenges? Would you pass the test, Leave a comment below and tell me what lessons you've learned from this incredible story. Type your thoughts about integrity, leadership, and seeing potential in unexpected places. I read every single comment, and I love hearing how these stories impact your life. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about leadership and character, then smash that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because I share stories like this one every week. Stories that will challenge your thinking and inspire you to be better. Remember, true leadership isn't about the title on your business card. It's about the integrity in your heart. It's about recognizing greatness in others and having the courage to lift them up. It's about being the kind of person who would impress a disguised CEO, not because of what you're trying to achieve, but because of who you truly are. The question isn't whether you'll face tests of character in your life. The question is whether you'll pass them. And the beautiful truth is that every day gives you a new opportunity to prove what you're made of. What will your story be?